the tweet with "Let's see what happens?" ? What does the question mark mean?
Well, the question mark is whether they can finally hash out an agreement. By all accounts, the previous round of talks were positive. They made a lot of progress, but there's still apparently some daylight between the U.S. and the Chinese negotiators, and there are some very important provisions to work out. So they're closer to a deal, but they do not have an agreement just yet.
Now, I've got a chart here in the Bloomberg which shows a spike in Chinese stocks over the last few weeks. Is this because of optimism around these talks?
I think it probably is. A lot of the rhetoric coming out of the talks has been positive, both from Donald Trump and from the Chinese, and there has been some progress on specific provisions. Treasury Secretary Mnuchin mentioned that over the weekend they hashed out an agreement on currency manipulation to prevent that, and the Agriculture Secretary in the U.S. also mentioned that the Chinese agreed to buy more soybeans. So the fact that they're making progress is very positive for the Chinese economy, and the fact that they're not going to implement tariffs starting this week is great for Chinese traders. So you see a lot of that in the market.
How much, Randy, do you think this progress is due to both presidents' concerns about the economies in their own country? I mean, clearly, in general, we've been concerned about a broader economic slowdown in China. And, certainly there are pockets of folks in the United States who have, as you mentioned, the soybean farmers who are not faring well.
I think that's exactly right. There's a lot of concern on both sides that this trade war is taking a toll. As you mentioned, there's a slowdown in China's economic activity, and we're starting to see some soft spots in the United States in terms of consumer sentiment. Some factory indicators are also looking weak, and a lot of that reflects concerns about tariffs. So both sides have a strong incentive to strike a deal based on that outlook. And as we know, Donald Trump pays a lot of attention to the stock market, and the stock market's very sensitive to the outcome of these talks. And a lot of people speculate that's why, for example, today he repeated on more than one occasion that talks are going well. And a lot of people see that as his attempt to fuel the stock market so that he can boast about that to his base.
Now, with the president set to hold another summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un, China's likely going to play a huge diplomatic role there. Does that leave some uncertainty still in this equation?
I think it definitely does. It's very complex, but apparently the Chinese and the North Koreans have a very close relationship, obviously. So if the talks there don't work out between President Trump and the North Koreans, he could potentially blame the Chinese and punish them on the trade front with these negotiations. On the other hand, the Chinese could punish Donald Trump if he doesn't meet them halfway in some of these trade concessions by not giving him a deal on North Korea. So it's a very complex political negotiations going on here, but it definitely is worth keeping an eye on this summit this week with North Korea to see how that could play into the trade negotiations.